Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek. And today I have Allison Pelot with me. We're going to talk about self-realization. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Paul. It's such a pleasure to be back.
You have been running your course, Finally Thriving, for a while now, so we'll talk a little bit about that. I thought maybe we could start with why you created the course, Finally Thriving.
Yeah, it's my personal growth program, and it came about from my Finally Thriving book, which I published in 2022, and I
Yes.
talked to you about last time we met.
Yeah.
And it is basically bringing in aspects of the book for people to experience, to go deeper into some of these teachings that I share in my book under the three main principles: align your higher mind, connect with your body, and learn how to listen to your spirit. And it's really a way that I can touch more people through a group setting in this way to help them grow because of what we've been through
Mm-hmm.
these past 3 or 4 years or so, when people have been really challenged spiritually, in their personal relationships, or you name it, everything. So I really wanted to be there to support people in their process and help them as much as I could in this group setting. So we do a live call each week with me, and they have a course that they go through as well on their own as the 12 weeks progress. It's a 12-week course and coaching program. Yeah, so I was really just inspired to help more people, and so this is the best way I could do it, through a group program online. It's all online. The teachings are recorded, so you can always go back and listen to them. It's a lifetime access to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted just to give people room and space to work with these concepts, connect with themselves, and be able to grow past, what they've even thought, well beyond what they thought they could do, beyond their limitations of their stories, their programming. And so this is how the Finally Thriving program got birthed.
Yeah, and you've run it a few times now, right?
Yeah, this will be the fifth time starting this August 2024. I'll be offering it, and each group has gotten better and better. Each group has become more open to learning what they don't know about themselves, and really going on that self discovery journey.
Yes.
Because your spiritual journey is a self discovery process, and
There is nothing else.
this is true. We're all like trying to find our purpose. This has been a big theme for many people. And I've discovered, and I was really struggling with this too for quite some time. Like, what do I, and equating the purpose with what I'm doing and not as much what I'm being.
Right.
And I realized that, well, I'm my purpose. And if I can just set the stage for me to be my purpose and follow through that way with my own self discovery and help people with theirs, then that's really all I need. There's no pressure there, to find a purpose, because whatever I'm becoming or being is my purpose in that moment.
I think purpose, I think, unfortunately, in our culture is so outcome oriented.
Yes, that's what I was getting at exactly.
And if you think of how a business is run, if you don't have a purpose for a business, it's not going to be successful.
Right.
I could go 1,000 ways about that. From, if you don't have a purpose, well, how do you market the damn thing?
That's exactly
And
right.
if you don't have a purpose, then what are you selling? I mean, Amazon, we all know, is a warehouse delivery system. We know the publisher publishes things. We know a mechanic fixes cars. But when it comes to purpose in a person's life, I think where we've lost a lot of context is that what we're really looking for as an individual, as a human being, is meaning.
Yes.
Because if your purpose is not aligned with your sense of meaning, for example, if you are told by your parents that they will only pay for college courses for you to be a lawyer or a doctor, then the purpose is really their purpose, but it doesn't have meaning for you because you might want to be an artist, a musician, or an athlete, or a biologist, or a farmer.
Yes.
So you can spend your life doing something for a purpose, But if it does not have meaning, you will find your soul dying a little bit every day.
Exactly. There has to be some discernment there. And that's what I help people with. And because, yes, we have gotten mixed up about purpose and thinking that it's something that, like you said, your parents have told you that you're here to do, or that it's just something grand that I need to do and step up to the plate with, or my purpose is a business idea that I have, which is, yes, you have to have an intention and a purpose around a business, but that's different than what your purpose is spiritually or on an individual level. Like, what are you here for, on a spiritual level? And that's really going to take you taking time with yourself every day, learning about what you feel like, what your energy feels like, what you just basically feel on a day-to-day basis, being honest about that with yourself and other people. So there's this term that one of my teachers said that really stuck with me: emotional honesty.
Yeah.
And that to me feels really important, because what we've been doing so much of our lives, and this is mainly the people I get are people who have really been perfectionists, people pleasers, trying to fit in, trying to belong because they just feel like they're not enough, and I've definitely been there, and I still go back there sometimes, but I come back to me because I know how I feel, and I'm honest about how I feel, and I don't try to hide that to pretend like I'm somebody else. I'm stepping in as myself.
Yeah.
And that feels so much more natural, so much better. And so I'm not trying to manipulate other people's expectations of me or guess what they're going to think or feel when they hear me say something, or if I do something that I may think that they aren't approving of. All these things go through our minds because we're trying to all belong, we're trying to fit in. But you have to really go through this journey of being with yourself so you can come to a place of accepting all parts of yourself there. That's how we come to a place of self-love, where we really take full responsibility in how we feel and how we want to show up and what we value. And then you move forward with that. And I feel like that to me is true purpose, and we get that mixed up, like you said, with things we're doing outside of ourselves. Like for years, I would try to place my lens looking outside to find my purpose instead of going within to find it.
I call that externalizing the self.
Yeah.
Because people don't, they value their self-worth by what they're doing or capable of doing or have done outside themselves, which has almost always got some academic or financial or the measuring stick has to be inclusive of other people's opinions.
Yeah.
In other words, if you think you're successful but your friends don't, then you have a conflict.
Exactly.
Because your validation coming from an external source requires a a vote from other people.
Yeah.
Right.
That's suffering to me.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, so like you're saying, you got to validate yourself, right?
Yeah.
We got to come to a place where we're validating ourselves. And for me, being a gymnast for so many years, I was a gymnast from the age of 5 until about 21. And so it was a beautiful sport. It was really great for me learning discipline and consistency. And at the time I was really ADHD, I've had ADHD all my life, and it was hard for me to focus or sit still. And now I'm looking back on that thinking, well, what kid really can sit still? Like that's kind of, that's unnatural for most kids to be able to do. Right. Yeah. But but I was always like, wanting to constantly express myself in various ways. And so gymnastics was a way, it taught me to focus on something for a little bit of time, very intensely. And then I'm off to the next thing. Right. And really you have to be in the present moment with it, because oftentimes you're in the middle of the air, you're doing a flip or something, you have to be in your body and ready to land.
Or
right?
hurt.
Yeah. Or you're going to get hurt, which I did get hurt many times from, going off in the middle of a flip. And then I just landed. I was like, what happened? Like, where was I just then? So I learned real quick to be in the body and to be present in those moments. But what it did was it it kind of ingrained a performance aspect in me, which you can think, well, performance isn't that bad because we live in a society where we're, about performing better, and we do all these things. We learn all these techniques and these skills to perform better in whatever we're doing. And that's not always such a bad thing, but it is not great if you're living your life as a performance. If you feel like you're always performing and you're not really able to show up the way you really want to as your true self. And so, because it just takes so much energy to do that. And
Yeah, it's also psychologically unhealthy. Enzymes are one of the most important things we can use to supplement our diet. Very few people have normal levels of digestive enzymes. It's extremely common to be digestive enzyme deficient because so many people are eating cooked foods, processed foods, packaged foods, etc. The best digestive enzymes I've ever found are Masszymes by Bioptimizers. And one of the things I like about them is not only are they the most advanced technology for how they're produced, the science behind them, but I take them on an empty stomach every morning and every night as proteolytic enzymes to help clean my body. So I've got Wade here, who's the formulator of these enzymes, to tell us how do they work as digestive and proteolytic enzymes, because today I think we really need to be supplementing with high quality enzymes. So Wade, what's unique about Masszymes?
Well, one of the interesting things is undigested protein is one of the biggest contaminants that cause problem for people, whether it's in their blood or inflammatory conditions or even impairing recovery. And it's quite common amongst athletes who have high protein diets, interesting enough, who are looking to add recovery, but they're not breaking down their protein effectively. And that was my case way back in the day as a former bodybuilding champion. So we set about cultivating and developing an enzyme formulation that handled all of the amino acids in a pH range from 2 to 12, as well as providing an assortment of assistant enzymes. In other words, it doesn't just break down protein, it handles carbohydrates, it handles fats, it handles fibers, a variety of different things, and they work synergistically together to make sure that you can break down just about any food and digest it properly. Now, when you talk about the difference between enzymes, there's digestive enzymes and systemic enzymes. Systemic enzymes such as like nattokinase or serrapeptase. Well, they don't help break down digestion, but they can break down inflammation or inflammatory conditions, undigested proteins, or scarring tissue inside the body. Well, it turns out when you take Masszymes on an empty stomach, it works exactly the same way. It will go into the bloodstream and now works as a systemic enzyme, reducing inflammation, accelerating recovery times. Matt just tore his Achilles tendon and made a full recovery after surgery within a few weeks, which they expected for many months. He was taking as many as 100 a day. Now, I'm not suggesting people do that, but this was an extreme condition. And the bottom line is Masszymes is great for recovery, for cleaning up undigested proteins in the system, as well for digesting just about any meal. If this isn't the best digestive enzyme or systemic enzyme that you've ever taken, you get your money back. That's the Bioptimizer guarantee.
And this month, you don't even have to buy Masszymes to try it. Bioptimizers is giving you your first bottle of Masszymes for free. Just go to masszymes.com/Paul free to get your free bottle. That's masszymes.com/Paul free to get a bottle of Masszymes for free.
I don't know if you know this, but the highest rates of teen suicide, now I don't know since COVID, but prior to that, I did research. The two countries with the highest rates of suicide turned out to be teenage suicide were Japan and New Zealand. You know what those two have in common?
What's that?
They have the highest academic standards in high school of any countries in the world.
Yeah, high pressure.
So what they found is that these kids were committing suicide because they were measuring their sense of self by how good their friends were doing in class and in school. And when they came to the conclusion they just weren't smart enough to keep up, they killed themselves.
That's terrible. Yeah,
So
it's measuring ourselves at that high standard, right?
Yeah, but there again, it is outside, I was never the guy that got the highest grades on tests in school. Just it never happened. doing certification programs where there was some kind of a test at the end, people would always come to me, the smart ones would always come to me and say, how do you do that? They would all be so nervous before the tests. And I'm like, well, you're the one that gets, 98% of the test all the time. What are you doing asking me? And they said, yeah, but somehow you always remember what to do. I can't remember that.
Right.
So the point I'm making is that it's not about necessarily getting the best grades or, achieving the highest objective measure of some standard that somebody else sets, but it's really, are you able to take whatever it is that's of interest to you, whether it be in a class or whether it be in life in general, and weave that into your own self-expression. Like we could all take music lessons, but I might really want to be a jazz musician, and maybe we're being taught classical music. So I leave the music lessons and use those skills to go make jazz. But then this teacher says, well, you're a lousy musician because you're not even playing classical music. And I'm like, I don't even give a shit. I want to play jazz. I just came here to this class to learn to play. But the person right next to you says, I wish I could do that, and has a lot of self-esteem issues because they're afraid to be different, So it's just, it always boils down to a person's perception of what's of value and meaning to them as an individual. And I think part of the problem is that it takes a fair bit of time for most people to mature, which classically should happen at puberty. We're supposed to reject parental ideas. It's a survival mechanism because our parents are usually, 1 to 2 generations older than us. So when a kid goes through puberty, they reject parental ideas because the children are actually seeing reality as it is, but mom and dad have all these lenses built up from social programming, parental programming, religious programming, their own biases, their own fears. So they're not actually seeing what's happening at the ground level. They're only seeing what their filter lets through. And so when a child goes through puberty, because they're only 13 to 16 years of age, they don't have all this programming in the way.
Yeah.
So they can see new trends coming. They can see ways around problems that people that have got too much programming can't see because their creativity is stifled by their belief systems. And so the issue being is that with the way the education system runs and the effects of religion and the lack of elders to guide us through an initiation process and to become an individual, we're really having this delayed formation of the ego. Steiner says, a few hundred years ago, the ego formed in native societies by about age 21, but now on average it's taking till 35 and sometimes 40, and sometimes it never forms. So what you've got is actually a massive number of people that are still stuck in the child archetype, wearing adult bodies, driving cars, working as doctors and scientists, and COVID was just a glaring example of that. Children need to be told what to do.
It's kind of like being stuck in the wounded child.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and prior generations, growing up in the schooling system, I mean, I hated school too. When I was in school, it was pretty boring to me because I just wasn't interested in anything that they were teaching me. And if I could have been self-led at that point, I probably would have. It would have been a whole different situation for me. But I think, the problem is we many of us that are older, we were in this generation of industrialized schooling, and there was a particular purpose for that. It was to get people working in the factories. We all kind of know that right by now, but we still keep doing it. We still keep using the system, which blows my mind. But my sister does homeschool with her son, and yeah, she does 2 hours of school with him each morning, and he's like one of the smartest kids I know. He's 8 and highly intelligent. He will gravitate towards something he's really interested in, and he'll learn everything there is about it. And then when he's done with that, he'll go to something else. So,
Sounds like me.
right now, yeah, exactly. But
Maybe
my
I'm
point
still
is,
8.
well, and like he's sitting there, like doing his work, and he's singing, like he's just singing, and he hasn't had any he hasn't had any training in singing or anything, but he sounds like an opera singer. His voice is just so uninhibited.
Yeah.
And it got me to think, wow, how much of this do we really need? How much schooling do we really need? And how much could we just lead ourselves into what we're curious about and learn all there is about it? As kids can certainly do that because they're so uninhibited, like you said, but because they're really discovering themselves. But adults can do it too. That we've just had so much programming laid on us over the years that really do limit us. We're limiting ourselves most often because this is what we've learned. But as we peel the layers off of that programming and we start to lead ourselves, then we can find that there is going to be gold along the way because we can get curious about our life. We can get excited about it. We can get joyful about it. We can actually express ourselves in our individual unique ways. And I guess that could be a way of developing your ego as well and really healing those old wounds from childhood because maybe they didn't get expressed when you were a child. So, this is really what I bring people back into is like get into that childlike curiosity that maybe you were never able to express when you were a child. You kind of glide through all of these experiences and experience yourself in different ways and discover yourself in different ways. Many of my creative endeavors have really pushed me into being very vulnerable. And some of the most vulnerable moments I've had are being creative. I've started taking an acting class and I did that because I wanted to learn how to really start feeling my emotions in front of other people because that was a fear of mine for a long time around vulnerability is actually feeling my emotions and exposing that in front of other people. Like I had a lot of shame around that. And
Where do you think that came from?
that's what I asked myself. I really don't. I think because my parents, because they say your inner world comes from your mom and then your outer experience, the material world comes from your dad. And I think my mom was she was heavily traumatized and neither my mom or my dad really expressed their emotions very well. They did go to therapy and they did my mom was always getting these self-help books. And so I guess that's what influenced me later on in life to go into the self-help realm. But they just were very emotionally immature and they didn't actually communicate very well. And so they ended up getting a divorce. And my mom had a very traumatic event. And she actually she just assumed that the therapist had told my dad about it. And I was like, no, like the therapist expects you to tell him about it. And they just went years and years without communicating like this heavy trauma that she had experienced. And it was really important for the relationship, but like they weren't communicating. And so this is what I grew up around is like a lot of confusion about what it meant to be emotionally honest or what it meant to honor your feelings. And gymnastics also suppressing emotions.
Yeah.
And we weren't allowed to cry. We weren't allowed to have any emotions because in gymnastics, because you have to be like everything's fine and kind of have that stone face,
You gotta
like
stay focused.
stay focused. Exactly. So you can't get pulled off with that. So I think between my parents and the sport of gymnastics, it just trained me to really numb out because when I was younger, I could feel everything. I mean, I just was so empathic. But what I've done over the years is I've gone into personal training where I can actually connect with one person at a time and help them with their body because their bodies will speak to me and I can communicate to their bodies and what their bodies need, even if they don't know.
Hi, everybody. Have you ever wondered why your blood is red? It's because it's full of oxygen and life force. It's what keeps you going. But what if I could tell you about something else that's red that will add more life force and keep you going? And if you start with a red juice before you have coffee or tea and wait a few minutes, you might find that you either don't need the coffee or the tea, or you need less of it. But this time, instead of getting coffee and tea, you got a lot of nutrition and a lot of great stuff for stress management and detoxification. And it's so important. I got Drew Cannoli. It took me 2 years to get him to come hang out with me and talk about this. I said, Drew, tell me more about your red juice. And he is right here to tell us what is on with your red juice. My kids love it. Everybody I know loves it.
Well, I love that we have it for kids, because
Yes.
when I was a kid, there was this big red dude that would burst through a brick wall, and he was like, oh, yeah. And he would feed me a glass of 50 grams of sugar, giving most people diabetes,
Yeah.
ADHD,
Yeah.
addiction,
Obesity.
all the things, right?
Mhm.
So when we created Red, it was, what's the alternative?
Mhm.
If we could create something that could create lasting stamina, lasting energy, and then we started to look at our ancient ancestors.
Mhm.
We talk about the Vikings, the
Mhm.
people that were rowing across the oceans
Oceans.
for days
Yeah.
to go to war.
Yeah.
What were they taking? Well, they were taking rhodiola.
Yeah.
Rhodiola is in our red juice.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, so out of all the mushrooms,
Yeah.
what's one of the best medicinal mushrooms that can give us long-lasting energy?
Mm.
We found cordyceps. Cordyceps are absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Not just any cordyceps or rhodiola, glyphosate residue-free and organic.
Mhm.
And how can we make it taste better than the, oh yeah, how do we
Yeah.
make it taste better than that without the sugar?
Yeah.
We added a little monk fruit.
Monk
And we-
fruit's amazing.
Yep, and we found the best berries on the planet.
Mm.
Berries in high amounts, which we have in the red juice, actually help increase stem cell creation in your body.
Mm.
What's better than that for our little ones and for us?
Yes.
And so many people are just lethargic, they're lacking energy.
Yes.
What could we do for that? Red juice in the afternoon, 2 p.m. rolls around, instead of a nap, instead of the coffee, drink the red juice. You're going to feel so much better.
Well, if you need the nap, take the nap if you can, but then take the red juice to kick you back into gear.
Exactly. I love naps and I love coffee.
I do too, but I love to make sure I got the nutrition in me first. The other thing is berries are a natural stimulant to the adrenal glands. So
Mm.
if people would do a little red juice before they do coffee and tea, they would pick themselves up naturally, except this time they're bringing in nutrition. And unfortunately, coffee blocks almost every vitamin and mineral you can put in your mouth. So, hey, there you have it, right from the man himself.
To try Organifi's red juice and get 20% off your order, go to Organifi.com/Chek20 and use the promo code Chek20 at checkout. That's Organifi.com/CHEK20 and the promo code is CHEK20 for a 20% discount.
Recently, I've really learned how to be with my energy, my own energy, and I don't know if manage is the right word, but like learn how the energy flow is, just to keep it going in myself instead of feeling like I have to suppress something or if something's stuck, just holding on to it because we hold on to things, right? And we store them in the body because we're afraid to let them come out or let them flow or expose them. And so, as we know, I mean, that comes up as physical ailments as well, in the body, because the body is not meant to hold that, it's meant for your energy body to transmute that. So I've learned these energy techniques through energy work, things I've learned with you. And also I did pranic healing for a while, learned a lot about the energy bodies through that as well. Much of my life, I feel like I was always kind of looking forward into the future way too much, or I'd be worried about the past or anxious about the past. But now I'm starting to realize that the more we can just be here in the present moment, and that requires us being in our bodies. And we say that, and people say, oh, yeah, in your body, but have you experienced that?
Yeah, I think for people that are out of their body, they don't really know the difference. I'll give you a good example. I've had many athletes that when they come to me, they're walking with a limp. And so they might be seeing me for low back pain, for example. And I say, well, I have a question for you. Have you ever injured your left ankle? And they say, oh, yeah, I've sprained it like 6 times. And I go, well, we have to rehab your ankle or your back's never going to get better. And they say, well, why are you saying that? I don't have any pain in my ankle now. And so I say, here, watch this video I just took of you. Notice you're limping. And it's the first time that anyone has ever told them or they've ever noticed that they were limping. And then I said, well, when was the first and when was the last ankle injury? Well, the first one was when I was 6 and the last one was 10 years ago. So you've been a professional athlete for all these years and you have been limping the whole time and you never even realized it. And so the point is there's an example of someone who has no sense of awareness that their body's not working correctly.
Right.
They think it's working correctly, but they can't figure out why they keep having back pain. So they keep looking at their back for the problem, but really the problem's somewhere else in their body, and it's causing a compensation pattern, and the back pain is the side effect of compensation. It's not the actual injury. So, the side effect of not being in your body is you lose touch with things like what foods work for your body, when you're tired, when you need to go to the toilet, when you need to move your body, when you need to breathe more, when you need to be in the sunshine, and the list of all the things that are called instincts.
Right.
Right?
Important things.
You
Yeah.
lose touch with your instincts.
Yeah.
And that's like being a fish out of water that doesn't know it's out of water. It's got a limited shelf life out there.
Yeah. There's a huge disconnect, and you would think that athletes would be so in touch with their bodies, but they're actually on the other end of the spectrum with that, because they have actually, and I say this from personal experience, they've overridden the pain. They've become numb to the pain for so many years that they don't even know when something needs to really be addressed or where it's even coming from. So
Yeah.
I've been going back and repatterning and unwinding all these old injuries and all these old patterns that I had gotten into through gymnastics in my body. And, I feel like my body feels better than it ever has.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think athletes have a strong kinesthetic awareness or kinesthetic intelligence, but kinesthetic intelligence is only one line of intelligence. There's many others, and one of them is emotional intelligence. And I think because our emotions are the vehicle by which we feel pain, pain's technically an emotion. My point I'm making is that it's not that they're not bodily aware, it's just that they're repressing one form of the body's information gathering system because your emotions are, very vitally important for navigating life and also navigating yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't have emotions, you're really lost. Because emotions are, I know you know this, but for the listeners, emotions are the archaic intelligence system that is below the intellect. If we're out of touch with our emotions, it's easy for people to trick us with what looks like a really good idea on paper, right? A lot of medical procedures can look good on paper, or you can see stats on television screens that say, oh, this many people have this problem, and this many people get robbed, and this many. So you need a security system. You need this. And, they sell the shit out of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is most people are out of touch with their instincts, and their instincts are the drivers of emotion. If you don't have an instinct for what is pleasurable and what's not pleasurable, then good luck with your sex life.
Yeah.
If you don't have an instinct for what is happy making for you or feels like love and connection, then you're probably going to go through a lot of relationships because, there's sex, but then there's 23 hours a day that you're supposed to be connecting to and relating to that person, and you can't do it more than you can do it with yourself.
Right.
For example, if you can recite passages out of the Bible, but you can't tell me when you're hungry,
right,
you got an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And so you can pass all your Catholic Bible tests, and everyone thinks you're a genius, but in reality, you're a sick person because you're detaching from emotional intelligence, hunger, and the need to satiate oneself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Those are all levels of our being, as you know. So if we have lack of physical awareness, then we don't know what to feed our body.
Yeah.
If we have lack of emotional awareness, we don't know what to feed ourselves emotionally. If we have lack of mental awareness, we don't know what we need to bring ourselves into wholeness mentally. And if we have no spiritual intelligence, then we can live a life full of accolades and financial success, but be depressed and or commit suicide, which is not uncommon at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also believe that this problem has gotten even worse while people have been on computers. You could say it's a virtual reality. They're in a virtual reality, so they're out of their bodies.
Yeah.
And they're not in it, so they don't know when to meet their needs. They don't know how to meet their needs. This could be this could be a cause of that. Meeting your needs, you don't know how because you're out of your body a lot. So
Well, computers take you into a state of hypnosis. So does television. So does
yes,
any
right.
screen.
And then time, it just goes by so fast, and you're like, what happened? Hours went by, and I didn't even notice. Right?
And almost all this stuff takes you into your left brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you have? You got disconnection from your wholeness.
Exactly.
Your right brain
Exactly.
is the brain of wholeness. And it's the brain that sees, how everything connects together. But the left brain is really the judging brain.
Yeah.
And so to judge means to cut, to chop up, right? If I say you are on my team or you're not on my team, I've made a cut. I judge you to be worthy of being on my team, which means the other team just lost you. The alchemists called the mind the logos cutter.
Okay. Yeah.
Logos meaning divine plan or blueprint, but the mind cuts the logos because the logos is so big that you can't comprehend it. In other words, if you're in your right brain, you're in the now. The right brain is not caught in the flow of time in a linear stream. It's in a state of the eternal now. Like, Ibrahim Karim says animals live in their right brain. That's why they're always fully present, because they're here now, because everything for them is all one experience. There's not a yesterday or I'm going to save this bowl of food till tomorrow.
Right.
They're going to eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
Have you stopped to wonder who is looking through our eyes and who is speaking to us behind and between the thoughts that seem to be our own? These feelings and deep questions are the voice of our spirit, our soul, calling us to become whole and telling us to tune into our inner compass that identifies and guides us to our unique true north. If you are ready to meet and develop an intimate relationship with your spirit soul, or to deepen the connection you already have, then the upcoming workshop, Beyond Ego into Soul Guidance, is for you. Over the course of 2 days, Paul and Angie Chek will guide you through exercises that sensitize you to your spirit soul and show you how to make direct contact with your unconscious, soul, and spirit or higher self. You can attend in person at Paul and Angie's Rainbow House in California or virtually online from anywhere in the world. If you are ready to develop the spiritual courage to put your ego self in the back seat and let your soul be your guide, then join us on August the 30th and 31st for Beyond Ego into Soul Guidance. Go to paulchek.com/events for more information and to register. That's paulchek.com/events.
Because of the left brain influence of media and most of the information that people are looking at all day has something to do with fear or triggers fear. Am I beautiful enough? Do I have enough likes? Do I have enough friends? Was my post good enough? I mean, the list of self-evaluation. It's all judgment.
Yeah.
So people get so trapped into their left brain, they start chopping their life into these little smaller and smaller pieces. And you see that as this is going on, people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. Why? Because the chopping is mirroring itself back in the mind. You look at this for a second. Oh, you got to look at this for a second. And so you get people that actually have all the money and success they ever wanted, but they're bored.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's all about separation and it's actually taking away from wholeness. Judgment in itself is a form of resistance. And I've
Yeah.
heard you say this many times, what you resist, you persist. So judgment, if we're judging everything harshly, then we're not accepting it. We're
Yeah.
creating more resistance. And that's just really, it can manifest in the body as tightness, as, fascial restriction.
Mhm.
And then we're stopping the flow of energy in the body as well when we resist so much against something. You know of that woman who, is her name Amma, who hugs people?
Yeah.
She's just there, right?
Yeah.
She's not saying anything. She's not really doing much but hugging someone. And she has a huge effect on people from just being.
Yeah.
So that's something we can learn from, is if we can come into this state of being where we are giving back to ourselves, that actually gives back to way more people than if we were just to try to do this little thing of meeting everybody's needs and saving everybody from themselves, this whole game. I think that would do so much more. And so that's what I teach my students, is to give back to themselves and learn how to receive themselves so they can receive the abundant flow of life force energy and life itself, and connect back with themselves, because we have been severed in the past. I mean, this is a real thing. People in our generations have been severed spiritually from source. But the changes we're going through environmentally, this ascension process that we're going through, has given us the ability to reconnect with that. So we do have that opportunity now to connect much faster with that our souls, basically.
Two things that came up made me want to dive deeper. One of the issues that you brought up was not enough, feeling not enough. And I find that a paradox of everything we've talked about, from religious programming to education programming. But really, a lot of it comes from what I would call scientism. The religion aspect of it is you're always a sinner, you're fallen, we're all fallen. I could go off on that for hours. But then the scientific aspects of it, what happens is when you have a materialistic culture, nothing ends in spirit. Nothing ends in something bigger. You get to the atom, then what? You go, okay, we got quarks and gluons and muons and leptons, and so you just get down to nothing.
Right.
So the answer to the question, who am I, just gets dead-ended.
Yeah.
And so if you live in a reductionistic culture that has reductionistic thinking, well, what happens when you apply reductionism to your sense of yourself?
Yeah, there's no wholeness there.
Do you
right?
become more or less?
You become less.
You just become less and less.
Yeah.
And so you have people like, I'm trying to remember his name, like an interview show, and it was about what happens when you die. And he said it's screened to black. That's it.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's just a completely spiritually void view. And that's a classic view of materialistic science. And that's one of the reasons people are scared to death to die.
Yes.
Right? But it's just the complete void of a spiritual connection. And before I go into that, because I have that as a side note, the thing that I am forever teaching my students and teaching my patients and clients, because this is obviously a common problem, which leads to a lot of self-judgment, guilt, and shame, and lack of self-esteem and self-confidence. And to the degree that a person feels I'm not enough, they often reach to extremes of dress, clothing, behavior, self-expression as a compensation. A good example is there's a group of psychologists in New York years ago that identified what's called body dimorphism.
Yeah.
People that claim to be bodybuilders and compete in bodybuilding, when they draw pictures of themselves, drew pictures of themselves that were much smaller to scale than their actual bodies were. And when they gave a piece of paper and a pencil to an anorexic and said, please draw a picture of your body, they drew bodies that were many times bigger in scale. So they saw that the bodybuilder's internal picture of themselves when they look in the mirror is a much smaller person than the rest of us are seeing.
Yeah.
And the anorexic looks in the mirror and sees a much larger person. So you see this distorted lens of perception is one that shows clearly that you are detached from the reality of the wholeness that it takes to make a self.
Yes.
So here's the drill I put people through. What percentage of you is made of the element of earth?
I don't know, 30%, 25%.
Okay, so earth would be bones, tissues, solid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which percentage of you is made of the element water?
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, more than that. I would say more.
Well, when the average person, it's 65% unless they're dehydrated. Typical human body, 70% water. For you, now we're up to 95%. How much of you is made of air?
Yeah. There's a lot of space that we don't put into account there, right?
Yeah, don't worry
Yeah.
about that. We'll get there.
I don't know. I guess the rest of the percentage, right?
And then how much of you is made of fire? Your body's got billions of mitochondria and warmth
Yeah.
and
Metabolic rate.
the metabolic fires, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And could you be here without the sun?
No.
No. Now, if I say, okay, take those elements away, where are you?
I'm here.
And there's no earth, there's no water, there's no fire, there's no air. So where am I? Where's Allison? I don't
I'm
see her.
everywhere.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
Isn't that just a freaking amazing little realization?
It is. Yes.
And that makes you what, Allison?
That makes me feel very expansive and
makes you-
enough.
It makes you everything.
Yeah, and everything. Yeah.
It makes you everything.
That's right. Yeah.
It makes you absolutely everything from everywhere at the same time. You know what we call that? God.
Yes.
It makes you God.
Right.
All these people that don't feel like they're enough don't realize that what
Right.
they actually identify themselves, which is a body,
Yeah.
comes from everywhere.
Yeah.
Because the food that you ate came from an animal or a plant, and that animal and that plant could not be here without the sun, without the moon, without the water, and the water molecules came from all over the universe. The sun and if you study the elements in the human body, if you break the periodic table down and say, okay, where do these elements come from? Well, some of these elements came from the sun, some of them came from here, but some of them came from other planets and other stars.
Right.
And then you say, well, where'd the elements in the sun come from? Well, that sun used to be part of other suns.
Yeah.
And so this goes on forever.
Right. Right.
So if you just look at it from an elemental perspective, we couldn't be here without the entire universe.
We are the universe.
You are the universe.
Yeah.
You are the universe walking around
Yeah.
pretending to be an individual.
Yes.
Okay, so this goes right back to what I was talking about education. This is why my kids are in a Waldorf school.
Yeah.
Because we go through school in traditional public systems learning that we're less and less and less
Yeah.
until we feel an identity crisis, which we have going on like crazy right now.
Right.
And to compensate, we have to try to make sure everybody knows we're here. So we do weird shit,
It gets very distorted.
you know, from changing sexes to acting like somebody that you're not, to doing extreme things to
get attention.
To get attention,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and some people don't survive it.
Right.
A lot of them don't survive it. And look at the rate of anxiety, look at the rate of depression, look at the rate of all the psychological disorders right now. They're through the fucking roof.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited to tell you about Wild Pasture's amazing meat delivery service. They have beef, chicken, pork, and wild-caught fish. My family and I have been enjoying their meat for quite some time now, and I just couldn't wait to tell you about it any longer. We had an amazing barbecue this weekend, and I'm still high off the meat. And they use a whole network of regenerative farms, which means that you're getting a different ecosystem from each farm, which means a different nutritional profile, which means nutritional diversity, which means health and vitality, which is exactly what we need right now in the world for ourselves and our families so we can all make a difference in the world. And Matt Smith's going to tell us more about this amazing company, Wild Pastures, about their offering and how you can get it. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks so much, Paul. And I'm excited to tell your listeners what they can get today and how we can help them out. So, as you know, pastured meats are crazy expensive. And so our goal with Wild Pastures is to tap into this network of regenerative farmers and to finally create the solution of where we can get the highest quality meats delivered straight to your door for the most affordable prices around. And so we're on average seeing that we are 40% cheaper than any other delivery option out there, and that our customers have reportedly saved, on average, $1,000 on their grocery bill from meat alone. And so Wild Pastures is a regenerative meat delivery service that is solving this problem. And you can get 100% grass-fed and finished, as well as pasture-raised pork and poultry and wild-caught seafood from Alaska delivered straight to your door. So it's far more convenient. It's far more environmentally friendly because we're using regenerative farms entirely. We don't use feedlots ever. So the nutrition profiles are way better. You can definitely taste the difference. I know we were talking about this on our just before we hopped on, you having a Father's Day barbecue and how incredible the pasture-raised chicken and beef short ribs were. And you can really taste the difference, right?
I'm
And
still
so-
high.
And so our goal is to remove the roadblock from people's minds that if they want to eat healthy, it's too expensive. And so that's where Wild Pastures comes in, is we are delivering with our own fleets of trucks whenever possible. We haven't raised our meat prices in over 3 years at this point. And we're really just creating convenience for the consumer and kind of being the high tide that rises all ships. If we can opt more people into a system like this, the cost stays down for everybody. And so there is a myriad of benefits that go into that. And so today, if your listeners want to try Wild Pastures and taste the difference and experience what it's like, go to wildpastures.com/Paul Chek or click the link in the show notes and save 20% off for life, plus get free shipping for life. Plus, get $15 off your first box.
That's a mind-blowing deal. I can't even imagine. I mean, I've never heard of an offer like that. And, most people would hear an offer like that and think, this can't be that good. But I'm telling you, it's not only that good, it's really good. Or I would not be sharing this on my podcast. I think everybody needs to get a hold of Wild Pastures for their family, for their vitality, for their longevity, and for the future of this planet. So thank you guys very much. So Matt, just repeat the website again.
Sure. Just go to wildpastures.com/Paul Chek or visit the link in the show notes and get 20% off for life, plus free shipping for life, plus $15 off your first box so you can try it.
You'll be glad you did.
We're addicted to the image, I think, is what's happening. And we've gotten more addicted to the image as social media has come into the mix and the more online, because it's like I talked about earlier, it's a virtual reality. It's not real. Like what you're seeing in the mirror is it can be distortive based on what your perception is of yourself. So that might not even be real. So how do we get to the realness of who we are? We start to become familiar with that instead of looking outside to try to get the outside world to tell us who we are or what we are or where we've come from or any of those things. We start to go from within, spending time meditating, taking some space in your day for yourself to do the things you love to do or to be creatively expressive and start to learn how to get to know yourself better that way, but and then get comfortable with it. What much of what kids do, before they get into school and start that reductionist kind of mentality about themselves, they have generally a pretty good sense of self.
They do.
More than most adults, some of them I've met. And it's kind of incredible how we really do make ourselves less and less in the outside world more real than what we really are as we get older. And we're not seeing ourselves as the conscious creators that we are of our own reality.
Yeah.
We're actually getting that done outside of ourselves. So, we look to, this is something that I've been writing about lately about worshiping false idols. And we continue to worship influencers, idols. We do this in religion as well. We kind of just, it's a form of divinity scarcity where we don't see the divinity within. So we're looking outside to connect with divinity outside of ourselves and other people. And then we're worshiping that, which is we're worshiping the personality instead of just taking the ideal and bring it in and expressing it ourselves. So a lot of the foundational stuff that we depended on as I was growing up is so different now. And for kids getting older and becoming adults, they're not able to depend on the same things that we were. I mean, they're not able to buy a house. They're not able to do the same things. The school is different.
We can't trust our medical profession.
Exactly.
We can't trust our legal profession.
Right.
We can't trust our government. We can't trust politicians. We cannot trust teachers.
Right.
The number of school teachers that are turning a blind eye to the fact that they're putting pornography in elementary schools and teaching
Yeah.
kids the weirdest shit. And
Yeah.
these teachers are showing up every day and turning a blind eye to it, just like doctors turn a blind eye to all the real issues of COVID that went completely against the Hippocratic Oath. You know, when do you isolate yourself from people? Not when you're sick. That's when you need people.
Yeah.
When do you stay out of the sun? Well, God, I got about 1,000 frickin' books written from the 1930s and before in here, and every one of them talks about the importance of being in the sun for
Yeah.
all the healing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no common sense left.
We become heavily dependent on the medical industry. We become heavily dependent on the food system instead of realizing that we can do a lot, of that ourselves. We can do a lot of that for ourselves. A little example of that was like I just did this little experiment. I don't do a lot of planting like this, but I usually just buy starts. And so I was waiting for the corn starts to come out this year, and I had taken some of the corn kernels off some organic corn that I had from last year, and it was in my drawer in this little bag. And I was like, oh my God, why don't I just take one of these kernels of corn and just try to grow it myself? I've never done that before. And sure enough, in a couple weeks, these little sprouts started sprouting up. And I'm like, I just grew my own corn starts. And so I don't need to wait for someone to put some out or for them to be available for me to buy them. I can just do it myself. So it's like these are the little things we can do every day to start practicing this, to start practicing being our own guide, our own our own authority in our life, so we can actually have true sovereignty. It's really the small things you do every day which build into that feeling of self-acceptance, sovereignty, that you feel like you have freedom over your own life. You've liberated yourself into making your own decisions based on your own values. You know what your values are. You're living in integrity.
Yes.
And that's what true integration is. Integration leads to integrity. And everybody is talking about authenticity and integrity right now. And nobody really, they're looking to other people to tell them how to be authentic. But you can only do that by starting to place more value on yourself. And so that's why I think you have to really go back to your feeling senses and start practicing feeling, because that is the only way we're going to really be able to discern this crazy world. You're not going to be able to see something on a video, even if, like, I saw this video the other day. It was Morgan Freeman was on it. It was an AI version of him that was created, and it wasn't even him, and he didn't even say those words, but it looked like him and it sounded like him. So more of these things are going to be happening. So we have got to stop depending on the media to tell us what reality is. We have to go within to feel into and to really step into our own reality and own it and claim it.
Yes.
And that's the real sovereignty there. And that's what I think people can own right now. And then, all that other stuff is whatever. No one can tell you what you can or can't own if you own yourself,
Yeah. The issue of what is reality is a philosophical riddle that's been debated since people have been talking to each other. And if I had to guess, I have at least 25 books just on the topic of reality. And they're full of debates, and what I call philosophical head fucking.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
But they do bring up, real valid issues. I mean, philosophers are deep thinkers, and I'm a philosopher. I would call myself a philosopher because philosophy is ultimately philos, love of, Sophie, wisdom. So, the real roots of philosophy is the love of wisdom. And I love wisdom. After reading all these books on what is reality and all the debates, you can just fall into any one camp, but nobody really defines what reality is.
Right.
Because they come up with a definition, someone says you're wrong.
Yeah,
they come up with another, they say you're wrong. So I said, okay, I'm going to take this into my own hands. So here's what I call reality. Reality is what your life depends upon. And your life does not depend on likes on social media. But it does depend on watering the crops and feeding the animals and keeping the earth healthy and having healthy relationships. And that's really what the self is. The self with a capital S is everything your life depends upon. And that's reality, because if you live in a digital reality or a virtual reality and you forget to deal with and nurture and care for the reality that supports your very existence, then you die by being distracted because
Yes.
you're out of touch with reality. And my other definition of reality is what's happening right now.
Exactly. That's
Right
all
now.
that matters.
Reality is what's happening right now. Right? And if what's happening right now is that you're in another reality at the expense of the one that supports you, you have a reality clash. We did the experiment, you and I, about what happens if you get rid of the water in you, the fire in you, the air in you, and you find out you're everywhere and nowhere. Right? And we were talking about the wisdom of children. Well, Mana's 8, and I think maybe when he was 6, him and I were I think we might have been on a walk, and he was holding my hand. I love it when he holds my hand. I just love my
So
little guy.
sweet.
He connects to Papa, and he's just like, you feel that. There's not words for the connection when your child wants to hold your hand and just be with you because they love you. And it just dawned on me to ask him a question. I wonder if his 6-year-old mind would give me the honesty that a 6-year-old mind does. So I said to him, do you remember where you're at before you came into mommy? Before you were in mommy's tummy? He said, without even hesitation, he said, oh, yeah. I said, you do? I said, where were you? He goes, I was flying around all over, everywhere. He says, yeah, I was just flying around. I said, well, why did you come to me, Mommy, and Penny? He said, well, I was all alone. And then he goes, he says, I was all alone and I needed a family. And then he goes, oh, wait a minute. I wasn't alone. Zoe was with me, but I beat her. So she had to wait.
Oh, that's so funny.
It was so
I love
hilarious. I
that.
cracked up laughing. He's like, him and his sister had a race to get into mommy's tummy, but he
Yeah.
won.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Paul.
And he still outruns her.
Oh, yeah. And so that's a great example of what reality really is.
Yeah.
Right. But what we're seeing is the crumbling of a reality we thought was reality, but it's really not. That's the false reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it needs to crumble, as we were talking about
Yeah.
when we weren't on the podcast.
So what's real is is our energy, right? Because our energy is animating this body, and it came in from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And energy is never destroyed.
Energy
Or-
produced cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Second law of thermodynamics.
So that's what we're doing. We're transforming energy. We're transmuting energy. We're
Mhm.
alchemizing it in our daily lives, whether we're aware of it or not. And it's not something necessary to be micromanaged or controlled, but it's just something to be aware of. And that's how amazing we are, and
Mhm.
it's amazing to be in a body too. It's amazing to be able to do that in a body and
Yeah.
have these physical experiences. And but most adults don't remember that about where they came from or have those kinds of memories. I remember when I was really young, and I asked my mom the question. I was like, because I felt like I was in a different body. I'm like, oh no, this is not my body. Like, and I asked my mom, do you ever feel like you're in another body or you're not yourself? I think I asked her, do you ever feel like you're not yourself? And she said, oh, yeah, I do sometimes. But I don't really think she understood exactly what I was saying.
Mhm.
But what I was really saying is, like, do you ever feel like you're in another body?
Mhm.
Like, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, it's new. It can do all these things. And I remember that very distinctly when I was younger. And I think that many of us can connect with that part of ourselves if we really want to, but we really have to take away, resolve these old stories, this old programming that's really keeping us blind to what is really real, which
Mhm.
is that we are all of it.
Well, what I'm going to do now is just close out our first hour. So thank you guys for joining us so far. Hope you enjoyed the dialogue. And I hope you are excited to become a Spirit Gym podcast member so that you can get even more from your podcast experience and learn more about how to apply some of these concepts in your life. So we will see you Spirit Gym members soon. And to the rest of you, I love you. And let's keep on learning and living and loving and growing together. And thank you to my sponsors for all your amazing products and the opportunity to give us all a chance to buy things from people that actually care about the world and put money into the soil and to feeding the farmers and taking care of life. You know, reality is what you depend upon for your own life. So lots of love. See you in the next hour.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation today between Paul and Allison Pelot. If you found value in today's show, there's more great content waiting for you in our special, brand new Spirit Gym podcast membership. When you subscribe, you'll get access to exclusive extended episodes of Spirit Gym with Paul Chek, members-only Q&A opportunities with Paul, access to the podcast members forum within the Spirit Gym community where you can interact with other passionate listeners, and the opportunity to purchase exclusive Spirit Gym merchandise. Your support helps keep the show running and allows us to bring you even better content. So if you're ready to dive deeper and unlock all these amazing extras, head over to paulchek.com/podcast and become a Spirit Gym podcast member today. Allison is offering Spirit Gym listeners 10% off her Finally Thriving program, which is starting again on August the 8th. Go to finallythrivingprogram.com and use the code CHEK10 to save 10% on your registration. That's finallythrivingprogram.com and the code is CHEK10. You can also find Allison on her website at AllisonPelot.com, on Instagram at AllisonPelot_, on YouTube at Allison Pelot, and on TikTok at Ali Pelot. Her book, Finally Thriving, is available in print and audio versions from Amazon.com. For more of the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit the show notes page at paulchek.com/podcast. You can also find details on the special offers from our premier sponsors, Bioptimizers, Paleo Valley, Wild Pastures, and Organifi, as well as the links to Paul's social media, his YouTube channels, and his blog. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.